Hello, all, and welcome. We are back with another episode in our series, Coaching for Transformation, hosted by myself, Dario Minaya, and joined by Susan Minaya, COO and Chief Learning Strategist of Minaya Learning Global Solutions, whom is also an executive coach. This episode, we dive into being an adaptive leader. Stay tuned to learn more. Hello, Susan. Once again, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Dario. I'm so happy to be back.
Let's dive right in. I'm excited to have you talk about this. Now, we talk a lot about resilience in leadership, right? That resilience is a buzzword there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, push through, stay strong, bounce back. But is resilience even enough anymore?
I would say that it's foundational,
Mm-hmm.
but no, it's not enough because resilience helps leaders recover from disruption. Adaptive leadership determines whether they evolve because of it, right? So that's the really big differentiator. And in today's environment, disruption isn't episodic, it's structural.
Well, let's define this clearly then. What's that real difference between resilience and adaptive?
When we talk about resilience, it's endurance, right? It's the ability to stay composed under pressure. I'm going to manage stress. I'm going to push through adversity. I'm going to return to baseline performance. And I think that's really the key. A resilient leader says, I can handle this. Adaptive leadership says, this situation is requiring me to change.
So resilience restores what was.
Yeah, exactly. Adaptability questions whether what was still works. That's a big
It's
difference.
a lot more in depth, yeah.
Adaptive leadership asks, what is this disruption teaching us?
Mm-hmm.
What assumptions need to be challenged? And what must we stop doing? That's leveling up. It's not really staying the status quo.
So is there a danger, right, in over-relying on resilience?
I definitely think there is, Dario, absolutely. In complex systems like healthcare, for example, resilience alone can reinforce outdated models, right? So we recover like from things like hurricanes and things like that, and then we kind of go back to the way we were doing things. If reimbursement shifts, workforce expectations change, technology accelerates, and we just push through, we protect what is familiar and comfortable and easy for us. So adaptive leaders don't protect the familiar, they interrogate it.
Okay, well, let's go even deeper. What actually distinguishes an adaptive leader in practice?
Okay, well, let's keep it succinct, right?
Okay.
You know, I like the practice of three, so let's talk about it from there. There are really three disciplines, and these are not soft skills. The first is regulated presence under pressure.
Okay.
Adaptive leaders understand that stress is actually data. They don't attempt to eliminate the pressure, they interpret it. They notice there are physiological and cognitive shifts under certain strain, which narrows, thinking, right? When we're under a lot of stress, our thinking narrows, we have urgency bias, we get very defensive, and they intervene deliberately so those things don't happen. And they create a pause long enough to prevent emotional contagion, as I call it, right? So I don't default into these bad behaviors. I actually just experience them, observe them, and change. Because when a leader amplifies tension, the system is going to contract. And when a leader regulates tension, the system actually can process the complexity. So this isn't a composure for optics, it's an emotional governance in service of sound judgment, if you will.
There's that word governance, but I haven't really heard you use it in an emotional way, if you will. That's interesting and it makes sense.
Yeah. So the second skill is that adaptive leaders actively challenge their own thinking. And actively is important here. They ask, what story am I telling myself? What data contradicts our current model? Where are we solving yesterday's problem? So, am I defaulting or am I really keeping my mind open to other possibilities? They're willing to reinterpret reality instead of defending their prior positions.
So it sounds like you're saying that the plan isn't sacred.
Exactly. The plan is foundational, but how we achieve it is provisional, right? The best way I can say it. Subject to tweaks and to meet the demands of our environment or our situation. That sounds adaptive, right?
Yeah, 100% it does. And it makes a lot of sense given the other topics we've covered on this podcast.
And the third thing is strategic reframing and redesign. The third thing is that adaptive leaders don't look for silver linings. They look for structural shifts. They ask, is this a signal to pivot? Does this require a different capability? What new normal is emerging for me here? Resilience absorbs impact. So if you think about that, the differentiator, resilience is an absorption of impact. So think of shock absorbers in a car, right?
Hmm.
So adaptability redesigns forward as the situation demands. This is where all the things we have been discussing about strategic leadership, inclusive leadership, and organizational leadership all come together.
I can see that. So
Mhm.
adaptive leadership isn't about sustainability.
No, sustainability preserves, adaptive leadership transforms. It creates a new baseline. It may require letting go of legacy practices, adjusting identity as a leader, redesigning systems that they have in place that don't serve them anymore, changing decision making norms because it doesn't work for them anymore. Leveling up often feels uncomfortable because it demands growth, not endurance, it demands growth. That's different.
Yeah, I can see that difference now. So if someone's listening and thinking, you know what, I'm resilient,
Mhm.
what should they be asking themselves about being adaptive?
Well, I would propose three harder questions. First, when pressures arise, do I regulate or do I react?
Mhm.
How am I responding? The second question I might say is, am I challenging my assumptions or am I defending my experience? Right?
Mhm.
Very important difference. And third, am I redesigning forward or am I restoring backward? Right? I'm just trying to get back to the way things were, or am I willing to say maybe the way things were aren't right now? So resilience keeps you functioning. Adaptability helps you evolve and advance.
And that's a different standard.
Oh, definitely. It is. Recovery keeps you in place, and adaptive leadership change who you are and how the system performs because of what you've gone through. It's really a big differentiator.
Well, thank you so much, Susan, for sharing your insights on being an adaptive leader.
Of course.
I think touching on the differentiators between adaptive and resilient leadership might really be an eye opener for many, myself included, seeing some of those distinctions. In our next episode, we'll be jumping into the topic of being an accountable leader. Until next time.